Welcome to Elite Rugby S&C podcast, the best podcast talking all things rugby and strength and conditioning. At Elite Rugby S&C, we provide athletes with strength and conditioning programs that provides you with everything you need to become a beast and take your game to the next level. No matter what stage of the year or season, Elite Rugby S&C has a program for you. You can try before you buy, so try our 7-day $7 trial to get a taste of what we offer here at Elite Rugby S&C. So take your game to the next level, become a beast, and join Elite Rugby S&C today. Today on the podcast, former Wallabies and Super Rugby superstar winger and fullback, Mark Gerrard, joins me for a chat. Mark had a fantastic professional rugby career. Mark made his debut for the Waratahs in the Super Rugby Competition in 2001. He went on to win the Super Rugby Competition with the Brumbies in 2004. Mark made his test debut for the Wallabies in 2005 against Italy in Melbourne. On this episode, we discuss life post-professional rugby and what Mark has been up to. We talk about the Wallabies 2022 rugby season and the upcoming Rugby World Cup. Mark talks about the 2004 Super Rugby season for the Brumbies and how they won the championship. Mark talks about his biggest takeaways and highlights from pro rugby. We talk about strength and conditioning for rugby athletes. And Mark tells some great stories along the way as well. This was a fantastic episode, and I just want to say thanks to Mark for joining me today. G'day, Mark. How are you?
Yeah, very well. Thanks for having me, Kieran. I'm very looking forward to our chat today.
Thanks for joining me today. It's awesome. This is the first podcast for 2023, so I'm very excited to get this episode done. So how's life going at the moment post-pro rugby, and what have you been up to?
Yeah, good question. Post-pro rugby. It's funny when you retire, you always think you're going to step away and, mate, that's it. But I haven't really stepped away too much. From retiring officially in 2018, I've kind of still sort of had my fingers in the rugby pie, so to speak, and I've had a few games here and there. And but then I took up an assistant coaching role over in the States, and that was with the Austin Gilgronis. And then obviously you probably would have read and heard things from last year. We departed that competition pretty rapidly in June. So, mate, from there I finished up, and you know, my wife and I made a decision to come home. It was just kind of at a particular point where, you know, we've got older teenager kids and we got our younger two. We got 4 kids, and our younger 2 are coming through high school. One's starting high school this year, and then one's in year 5, year 6. So it's kind of a bit of a, not so much crossroads, but just transition for us. And, you know, since retirement, it's been interesting. I've always been around the building game. Was an apprentice, or was a builder when I was a younger lad, and my old man was pretty adamant that I had to finish my trade, and you know, I did that and everything else. So, and then I really didn't pick up another tool for another 15 years. That old rugby career took off, and then, you know, I retired when I said 218 in around that area, that time frame. The old man wanted to sort of finish up, and I kind of jumped on board for 18 months, and then I racked off to the States with a bit more rugby, and he got the shits with me, and then I came back in June last year, and, you know, I kind of thought, well, you know, I put it this way, mate, I haven't really worked for 20 years, so I'm going to jump in and work for the next 20, so it should be pretty fun. And, you know, and that's kind of the way I thought of it, and changed up a little bit and started our commercial building company. And, you know, a little bit slow to start with, but that's like all businesses when they do start. But now we're slowly ticking by, which is good. And it's exciting because it's your own, and you got to make it your own.
No, that's awesome. Sounds like you've been up to a lot. What was it like going over to the States and doing some coaching over there?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's obviously from an Australian sort of point of view, and the way that we got brought up and the way we learned sport. Everything is about sport and, you know, participation and involvement and things like that. But, you know, when you talk about sport from a younger age and then coming through, no matter what sport is in the States, mate, they do it to the nth degree, and they do it beyond the actual sport itself. And what I mean by that is, you know, we play professional sport here, and sports, I should say, in Australia, but we're so amateur when it comes to the United States and America, and those top tier sporting probably landscapes and environment. I'm talking like your NBAs, your NFLs, your FIFA, all that type of your Premiership in football that they call it. Like, it's very different in the way that they do it. They, what I call, would like to create an event around most sports. And so at that elite level, you're like going to a concert. Like, our performance is 80 minutes, but that's nothing. It's more so what's built around that actual performance, and you've got a 3-hour lead up to the game. You've got a post sort of, I don't know how to describe it, a post 3 hours after that game, and however way you want to look at that. That's what they have, and I think that's something that I'd love to see over here, because it'll create not just rugby, it'll just create more atmosphere in and around the game, and it'll make it a genuine day event where it'll be an enjoyable time as a family to go and actually go to the tailgates and have lunch pre the game at 3:00 or whatever time the game is, and kids get to interact with some of the players and things like that. That part of sport in America, mate, they're leaps and bounds in front of most of the world, if not everybody. But there are some things when it comes to rugby, I think, that they've got a lot to learn, and also within that too, not just the learning aspect of it, but I think the understanding of where the game goes, they've got a little bit of an old school sort of mentality. There's nothing wrong with that. That's kind of where they've been brought up playing the game. They've been playing the game for a long, long time, and everyone doesn't look at that. Yeah, it's 50 plus years over in the States, and some clubs are even longer than that. So that's something that people have to understand and recognise. Like, they do play a lot of rugby. And probably one thing I did find is when I was over there with that experience, like great experiences, right, every second conversation, I met a couple of my neighbours, he goes, yeah, I played rugby in high school and college. It was interesting. And I was like, oh, yeah, what did you play? And he goes, I have no idea, but I love that terminology named hooker. And I was like, oh, my God, it's so American. But you know what? Every second conversation led to a rugby conversation. So I'm thinking in the back of my head as a coach, and, as a former professional player, it's like, how does this game not take off here? Like, we're missing the boat here. We're missing something. Not in Australia, but we're just in general. So, obviously with the MLR competition, they're trying to revamp it and go into that way. And, it's a little different too, because the way that that's governed with individual ownership, and owners want certain things as every owner does of any organisation, and it's just something that I think they will have to probably take a backward step to actually let the game grow itself in some way from a grassroots level, which I think they're doing at the moment with the transitioning of new coaching stuff with the national side and so forth. So, but to answer your question, I had an absolute ball in the States. I met some really interesting people, and I've honestly met some lifelong friends, and that's including a lot of the players that I got to know over there from America. And it's funny, a lot of expats that have gone to America for college at a young age, which I didn't really know of and didn't really expect. There's a lot of them, a lot of South Africans, a lot of Europeans. So I think that was a pretty good introduction for me to understand that rugby sort of landscape in the States. And as I said, mate, I had an absolute ball. Probably drank a little bit too much than I anticipated in Texas, but as Texans, everyone likes to say they're very similar to Australians. So that's what I enjoyed.
No, that's awesome. And totally agree. Americans do sport just on another level. And prior to this conversation, I was just watching the college football grand final. And it's just incredible, the atmosphere, the players, and just how they do everything. And just like you said, it would be awesome if we can bring something like that over to Australia for all forms of sport, not just rugby. But how do we make this game more exciting? Because as we both know, it's a very exciting game. Like, when I tell people I'm involved with rugby and I love rugby, I say to it, I love rugby because it's a competition. Everything is a contest, and there's no guarantee for possession or anything like that. And the tactical area around it as well is just so fascinating to me. And I really do think we should have a lot more support than we do now, and we should be one of the best sports in Australia, not behind other sports. So it'll be interesting to see how we can bring some of those things over and look at what Americans do well, but just put a bit of an Aussie, taste to it all.
No, I agree. Like, it's hard. I can't really answer your question how to make this game better. I don't think we can make the game better, but I think we can create a better environment of the game and for the game. And what I mean by that is just, how's the game being played? To me, it's too technical. Even from a coach's point of view, it's too technical for the players to understand. If a coach is trying to get across a particular message or detail the law of the game, and the players still is not getting that part of the game, it makes it very difficult to coach it. And, that was every now and then was a bit of an issue in the States. But I think, no, I don't really think. I personally would like to see the game revamped in certain ways. Now, it's not recreating the wheel. Rugby's, like you said, it's a unreal sport. It's a global sport, which I think that's a really big benefit that we have here in Australia on that rugby side. But why do we cater for at the moment? I look at this demographic in rugby in Australia is, as you said, it doesn't sit, potentially, I might be wrong here, it doesn't sit in our top 5. Now, let's not compete with that and go, okay, it doesn't sit here. Why are we not in here? We should be doing this and put the money here and above everything else. You know what? No. Well, let's take a couple of steps back and go, okay, well, I'm going to get out to not so much the regional areas, but if I can, I'd get out to some of the areas like your clublands a little that have the ability to host 15 to 20,000 spectators. And let's cater to that. Let's actually pack out 25,000 seats every single game rather than going to a 45, 50,000 seat stadium and maybe getting 15,000 people, maybe getting 10,000 people. I think creating the game and actually making it a bit more of a, not an elite ticket, but more of a sought after ticket. Then, mate, there are only 15,000 seats. You want to come in, you got to be able to get in here and obviously get in early to pay your ticket to get in. If there's 40,000, you'll be like, I guarantee all my mates do it. No, I'm just going to roll up and go watch the game. Mate, there's plenty of tickets. Mate, let's create a little bit of competition for the fans to come and actually watch. See, I missed the game last week because there were no tickets left, sold out. No worries. Guess what? Get on the computer, jump on a little bit earlier and purchase your tickets. You know what I mean? Like, I think we're trying to fight something that I personally don't think that we should be fighting. We shouldn't compete. Like, why are we competing with rugby league? Why are we competing with netball? Like, why are we competing with football, soccer, however you want to call it? Like, why are we competing with them? Like, we've got to stop thinking that way. And like, to me, let's just create our own identity and go, okay, this is what it looks like here. This is where we're at. And this is what we need to do. Like, we can always grow the game. No problem. I just think that we're probably doing it a little bit differently. We shouldn't say differently. I just, we had our opportunities during COVID. Like, oh my God, I looked at that and just said, oh, this is incredible. Like, we can really vamp this game. And, I'm good mates with Jimmy Galvin, who just did the Aqua Rugby, and that was just an event because he loves the game. That's what it was, And you're talking about people never seen a game, but hey, bought tickets. Yeah, they came and got on the piss and enjoyed it and everything else. But at the same time, like, it's an event. Create the event, people will come.
No, I like that. And I think going back to the NFL, one of the owners for the owner for the Atlanta Falcons, he makes the stadium, there's certain tickets and food relatively cheap. So if anyone can buy it, any family can attend and then not have to fork out, let's say, $50-$60, to feed their family at a game. So he's come to the conclusion like, well, I shouldn't be charging this much for a hot dog and a drink. Like, I should be doing it much cheaper. And he's seen so much more benefit for that. And families who thought they couldn't afford to go to a game can go to a game and attend and enjoy the atmosphere. So I think looking at little things like that, plus everything you just said, it's not too hard to grow the game. You just got to have some proactive people wanting to grow it and get out of their ways that they're in right now and change and grow.
Yeah, mate. And do it like, I'm sick of this. I always hear traditionalist this and traditional game. And like, what is a traditional game? I have no idea. The game's gone so far from where it used to be. And, it's actually almost coming around with a bit more structure now. So that's just the game. But I'm with you. Like, there's no way in the world. And if you look at our current sort of society and where we're at, I've got a wife, 4 kids, and, we're up in and around sort of the $600-700 a week just buying groceries. Yeah. Can we afford another $250 to go watch a game on the weekend, considering the tickets would be $30-40 each? There's all of us. I'm already sitting at $160 with tickets, So, like you said, we just got to be, I don't know. It's not easy because a lot of those major competitions and sports owners actually own the stadiums as well. So we just got to look at some way for it to work for everyone. But let's stop fighting everybody else and being competitive with everyone else. We just got to be better than what we are every day, every year, and just slowly grow the game.
I think grow the game together, not just as separate franchises, Waratahs versus Brumbies, Brumbies versus Reds. It's like we're all in this together to get more fans to our games. It doesn't matter if we're a home or away. How can we collaborate to grow this game and just make it better?
Yeah, I'm all for the competition. I like the Derby games. I like how they are. You know what? I'm New South Wales, you're Queensland, I'm the ACT, you're whatever. I do like that part of it. I do think that we got to collaborate a few more ideas together. We all play the same game. We just got to, not so much the game and tactics per se per team. I'm talking about the game in general. Like, how can we grow it in other ways and change it up? And mate, why don't we, like Kiwis, like, why don't we take off and go play a game in the South Pacific, or change it up and go over to America and have a game with there? Now rugby's starting to sort of take off. Like, mate, we've got to sort of take our chances a little bit here and there. And again, like the traditional stuff, mate, there's too many old boys who just are in it. And this is where
That's all good. Let's move on from that, because I think we can spend another 40 minutes just talking about that. So what did you think of the 2022 season for the Wallabies, and what's your prediction for the 2023 Rugby World Cup for the Wallabies?
Yeah, like it was probably an up and down season, probably from their point of view, I'd say, with the Wallabies. But injuries, Jesus Christ, we had some injuries. I haven't seen it that bad for a long time. I think 09 was almost, it wasn't 09. I can't remember, but it was a wee while back that we struggled for. We pretty much could have had an injured 15 compete against our current 15, and it would have been a bloody good game of rugby, So, but that's the game. So how do we be better from that, and how do we have an understanding and go, okay, well, if we had this huge drop off on injuries, like, where are these injuries coming from? What's happening? How are we getting these injuries? You're playing an elite sport in an elite environment, and mate, I'm probably putting it on more so, not so much. Yeah, I'm probably putting on a bit of the medical staff, the conditioners, the trainers, just all of it. Like, we're getting injured. If it's major injuries and things like that, very different. But I'm talking, if there's too many soft tissue injuries, mate, we've got to be looking at something going on around it. What are they doing? That's part of being a professional, especially in that environment. Probably the other part too, when you're looking at players, I just don't think we have enough experience across the board and consistency across the board with players understanding. Easier said than done with playing. I'm talking probably more so of the balance of our 9s to 10s. Like, what does that look like? I know we were very Nick White, because very structured, very strong, very experienced, and then we'd have a relatively inexperienced 10. That kind of combination. And then it came in, you see Bernard play a few games there at 10 too, and add that steady ship. So I think I would have gone for a more of a, mate, I love Whitey. Mate, I reckon Woody's an unreal player. And I do think he needs to be there for a long time and potentially be the starter. But every now and then, I probably would have thrown in McDermott and got him to start at 9, just because it creates a whole different element of the game. Yes, we're probably playing the All Blacks, and it's like, no, we want to be really methodical and everything else. But yeah, at the same time, we need to actually have players that could change the scope of the game and actually go, you know what, he sees an opportunity, let him take it, and we just support him and follow him, that type of thing. And again, easier said than done. The coaching staff would have done that homework. But yeah, mate, probably going back to what you're saying, when our 22 season for the Wallabies probably wasn't, and again, I'm viewing this from an outsider's point of view, and I probably think it wasn't up to scratch at all. I just think we're probably out of depth in certain positions with players. Could you say consistency of selection of who's playing where and everything else? We probably chopped and changed that a little bit too much as well. But who do you know who's in the mix come World Cup next year, or this year, sorry, and who's playing where and everything else? Like, I understand what they were trying to do. I think players needed to put their hand up a little bit more. And yeah, it's easy, as I said, easier said than done. But mate, to me, it was probably a below par average. It was a below par performance, from a Wallaby performance point of view this year in 22. But
yeah,
the whole new year, World Cup year.
100%. I definitely agree with what you're saying there. And if you can't have your best available, match day 23, it's going to make it very hard for you to be able to win games and win consistently. Yeah. But in saying all that, with all the injuries, we're not far off. Like those games that we did lose on the autumn tour or the spring tour, depending where you are, like we're only losing by a couple points, and we lost one game by penalty goal, and we're not far off, and that wasn't our best team. So I think it's not too much panic stations at the moment. It's just we got to be a bit more faithful to the process, and hopefully when the Super Rugby season ends, we do have our best available players ready to go for those lead-up matches, and then when the first game of the Rugby World Cup comes along, we're ready to go, and we're firing. And we have a very consistent 9, 10, 15, because those three positions in the back line have just been all over the place last year.
Yeah, probably going back to, answering your question and getting it right. Like, I don't think there is a right answer for it, but I just think just getting the balance right, no matter what that'll look like, no matter what type of game you're after and how you wanted to play that game. But, mate, I never doubt the boys. I'm always there with Bills on, mate, with a beer in hand, just going, yeah, we're up, we're on, we're ready to go. That's just the way it is. That's just our mentality as Aussies. So I think there are a couple of elements. You're right. We only just lost a few games. Like, even look at that French game, I was like, man, we should have won that by a lot more. That just comes down with sort of experience and timing and what that looked like on certain parts of the field. Then you look at that Scotland game when Woody came on and kicked that ball out, and just having the game nous and understanding of, what needs to happen. It's just getting the balance right. And again, I'll keep referring back to it. Easier said than done, but it's just something that, the boys are just going to have to live with and keep working through. I would definitely like to see Hoops in there and Hoops stay there. I think he adds a steady ship. Whether he's captain, I'm not sure. I personally would like to take the captaincy off him, even though they did. And just let him have that freedom of just playing the game, because I think when he's on. He's ultra competitive. And we need somebody like that, whether they're on the ball, in and around the ball, just constantly at the defence, constantly at it in attack. And I really enjoy that about watching Hoops play. Just got to get that balance right. And what do they look like? I don't know, but I'm with you. I'll be there with Bills on with a couple of beers, ready to go.
I think we go through the group stage undefeated as well. I've seen some things everyone's really doubting us, saying Fiji and Wales are going to dominate us. I'm like, can you tell me when Fiji has actually lived up to the hype? Like, I love their style of play, but they've never really lived up to that hype at a sort of World Cup. And Wales are worse off than us. Like, they're going to take a long time to get back to where they need to be.
I think 2007 Fiji, when they lived.
It's a while ago, though.
It is a while ago. They've got an incredible squad. They've got incredible players. It's just obviously bringing it together. Makes it tricky too for a lot of those South Pacific teams. Samoa's had a good season last year towards the end of their spring tour and how they performed. Tonga did quite well on their spring tour, 4 from 4, which is good. It's just getting that. It's hard for those teams because a lot of their major players are all contracted elsewhere and overseas. So they're kind of governed by their current clubs or whichever clubs they're at. And then it's, sometimes they're not allowed to be released because they've got certain club games, because they are contracting and things like that. That makes it a little bit more of a challenge. But I just think that Fiji-wise, if they perform the way that we'd expect, they'd be definitely world beaters. But come down to it, your top 5 teams in the world are very systematic, are very diligent in a lot of their set pieces, scrum, line out, defence, exiting their own areas. So key parts of the game. If you want to be a top 5 team, you have to be consistent at those key elements of the game: scrum, line out, your restart, your exit, and your midfield. How efficient are you in your midfield, whether you're a 3-phase then kick, or whether you're a 4 or 5-phase then kick, or whether you're a kick first then apply pressure. So that's that Africa style, but it just purely depends on how you are, but you've got to be consistent.
Yeah, 100%. And one thing I'll add to what I said is there are going to be upsets in the World Cup, and you as Wallaby supporters, we don't want to be the upset with Fiji, because you just don't know what can happen on that day. And what we saw last year with the Wallabies is we made 15 changes against Italy and got beaten. We can't do that against the Fiji or Welsh side, because we just don't know what's going to happen. And again, we see that chopping and changing. It's not going to really be any good. So you got to earn the right if you want to make those changes, but we can't take them lightly. But I'm pretty confident that we'll go through the group stage with 4 wins.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I'm definitely with you there. I think that I just think mentally, even now, like, to be honest, because they've already named that squad earlier on, like that whole extended squad is like from now on, to be honest with you, how they would look at it from a professional point of view as a Wallaby is, okay, hey boys, right here is World Cup. Everything we do now is all purposeful. So every day is towards the World Cup. Yeah, they've got to go back to Super Rugby and everything else, but your preparation, your attitude, your mentality, however you want to train, whatever that means for you to be in the World Cup and push yourself, push the next person, get that competitive edge, so to speak, and be there, that's your mentality. That's your kind of drive, because that's kind of, if you're at the top of your game and that's where you want to be, that's how you actually apply yourself in that World Cup year. I know I only did it once, but the understanding of the World Cup being a last September period is November last year or December, however you got back into the season, pre-season or whatever it was, is your mentality is, hey, World Cup. But my goal is, when I was at the Brumbies, was like, hey, I'm at the Brumbies every day. We're winning this comp. Every day I'm going to win training. And that was just a ripple effect leading into selection for the Wallabies and then going into the World Cup. It's kind of just having that ultimate, I don't know how to pronounce it, but like it's an ultimate professional mental state that you're going to be in every day to be in that World Cup. That's almost 13 months of just up here.
I think it's good that they named this squad so early and having the camp right now as we speak, because it puts a bit of a target on their backs, because I'm really excited to see who's going to step up this year in Super Rugby for Australia and try and potentially take one of those spots from those players. You know, like a Tom Hooper comes to mind. Like, if he didn't get hurt last year, I think he would have been in a Wallaby squad because he was playing unreal rugby. So there's going to be those fringe players who are going to see that they didn't get into the initial first Wallaby squad this year, and then just really have a good crack at Super Rugby, especially when those players are getting rested, and could potentially earn a spot in that touring squad over in France.
Yeah, it's a good squad, and I think for what we have now, you're right. It actually puts all the boys that are in that group on their toes, so they are, as I said, like they're mentally preparing for the potential World Cup, but knowing that they have to take that over to club and then create that environment internally. So every day you're constantly driving yourself, knowing that at the end, if you are and you want to, and that's where you want to be, like that you'll be able to get there. So you're right. Oh, yeah. I tell you what's tricky for me is hooker position, because I know that Latu's back now from overseas. You've got a couple of these sort of positions on where we want to be, and yeah, it's going to be pretty interesting, pretty tough selection choices just in who is our best mix from 1 to 50, 1 to 23. Like, who is our best mix? Are we better off having a stronger bench or a stronger back three or a reserve utility that comes on knowing that he can slot in, like all these type of stuff? Like, it's just one of those things that what best would work for us.
And a sneaky plug for me. I did was the last video I did last year on YouTube. I did announce my Wallabies team from 1 to 23 as well. So definitely head over to Elite Rugby SNC YouTube page and watch that.
Yeah, I'm going to definitely jump on that. I'll critique it and send it back to you.
That's awesome. So going away from that stuff, growing up as a young lad, what sports did you play and how did you end up playing rugby?
Yeah, so as a young kid, I did everything. Whatever we had around here on the northern beaches at Narrabeen, I did everything. Mate, grew up surfing, skating. Used to skate to school, and when I bring the skateboard to school, and there was an old hedge as we crossed the road at somebody's house. We kind of, one night, we dug a huge area in the middle of it because it was quite tall, so you can't really see over the top. But if you had to lay on the ground, you could definitely get under it. We used to throw our skaties in the top of this hedge during the day as we'd go into school, drop it in there. You wouldn't notice it. We'd cross the road, go across the road to school, and then come back and then sneak under the hedge and grab your skatey and skate home. That was us growing up. But I grew up surfing, cricket, like all of it, a typical Aussie kid as he would do. I played league all my life. I didn't play rugby till probably I was about 14 or 15. And how I got into play rugby is a mate of mine at school. I was coming back from, I can't remember where I was out west, and I was coming back from somewhere, and he called me up if I was interested just to fill in because there were a couple of players short. I was like, yeah, why not? It was a Sunday morning, I think it was. And I'm like, yeah, no problem. So I ended up going down, have a run around, played 13, 10, fullback all in one game. But he had no idea what was happening. telling me to kick. I wasn't kicking. I was just running everything. It was just, yeah, I really enjoyed it. And then I only played, I think, 4 or 5 games for them that year, and ended up playing for the Raddies and got picked in a couple of little rep teams. And I enjoyed it because I just felt I had a fair bit of freedom, even though league's got a stack of freedom back then. A little bit different now, but kind of that's where it was for me growing up. All my stuff was fishing, surfing, hanging out with the boys, and then rugby kind of took off when I was in year 12. Well, they offered me a full-time contract with the Waratahs, and so I signed that while I was in year 12, and yeah, kind of never looked back.
That's awesome. Do you think if you didn't make it in rugby union, you could potentially have a role in rugby league to play?
Yeah, yep, I would say I loved league, playing rep league growing up and everything else. I enjoyed that, and up against sort of your Braithen Asters and all those boys growing up, that was fun. I enjoyed all that type of stuff. But yeah, I'd probably say, without being arrogant, yeah, I reckon I would have. But if I didn't play any professional sport, I would have just been a builder. And there's no shame in that. I don't mind getting my hands dirty. I think it's enjoyable thing, and that's what I'm teaching my 18-year-old now.
That's awesome. So you did have an awesome rugby career, and what has been the biggest sort of takeaways and highlights from playing professional rugby union?
Oh yeah, this is deep. Probably for me, the biggest takeaway in the game itself, well, the biggest takeaway for rugby from rugby for me would probably be the appreciation of it. And what I mean is I appreciate the game on and off the field. I appreciate having the opportunity to see the world at a young age. I appreciate what the game's given me as an experience in life and memories, that I've got to be able to share that with my family. I think that appreciation is huge, and I really appreciate that part of rugby. Probably some of the greatest memories for me, creating some really good friendships. And I think the ability that rugby has, you get to see the world. I've met some really cool people around the world who are still friends. Our liaison officers in 2007, Patrice and Veronique Cronin, they were our Wallaby liaison officers when we were based in Montpellier. And when I got injured in the first game against Japan, they went above and beyond to help me and in everything I could have done, because obviously I was a bit of a cripple rolling around with crutches and things like that. And I remember post that game, had to go in the hospital, get scans and everything. And yeah, I had a grade 3 medial ligament tear in my left knee and couldn't do anything. So I was in a leg brace with crutches. And Vero, the wife, Patrice's wife, the husband and wife, like, she bawled her eyes out for me. I said, "Oh, it's just a game. Nothing I can do about it." And she was quite upset, and I didn't understand. I was like, "Oh, Frenchies, geez, they're weird." And from there, her and Patrice helped me out a lot, just being there and just getting to enjoy France. And I think that's something that, and again, go back to the appreciation part of it, I extremely appreciated their friendship to start with, and we're still mates now. And I helped when they first came here in 2011 in Australia. I helped them migrate. Mind you, they've been a little bit tricky for them to migrate, a little bit older, but I've helped with them and their kids settle into school back then. Now they're older. She has a young son now. So, it's amazing what rugby did for me with the travel, but then again, it's amazing. And I really appreciate getting to meet new people. And mate, I'm all for a conversation and a chat, because don't know where it'll take you. And also, it's not hard just to say g'day and how are you, That's something that I got brought up doing, and I'll probably continue to do that and annoy people, because I probably have a tendency to talk too much sometimes.
No, I think that's one of the things you probably don't think about too much when you're playing is bringing just random people together in a team to then go out and play for each other and just build connections over a season. Just like you said, you don't know who you're going to meet and what those relationships build into over time. I can just think of countless conversations that I've had with young athletes and stuff, and seeing them grow up into better people and also better rugby athletes, and then just the connections I've made with my teammates as well has been awesome. And it's yeah, I just can't really speak about it enough. It's just something you sort of have to experience. And playing team sports, doesn't matter what sport it is. I think that's one of the benefits to playing a team sport is getting to know people, getting to know people's stories, and building those connections.
Yeah, and probably I'll answer my favourite. Well, if there is a favourite memory, I don't really have a favourite memory because they're all pretty unique in themselves. I think for me, my family wise is my very first test in Melbourne. I had my wife and our baby son, well, our eldest son now, but he was our baby boy then, at my first game in 2005, playing for the Wallabies against Italy. And then I was in Japan at the time in like 2016, and I got a call from Michael Checker to come play some midweek games and potentially sit on the bench for a couple of tests because they were a little short with outside backs and all utility cover. I'm like, you sure about that, mate? I'm 35. I've got more grey hairs than probably you. And this is me on the phone at like 2 a.m. when he called me up and I woke up. He's like, no, Gerrard, I want you to get over there. I'm like, oh, okay. So we had the quick conversation. And mind you, I've just played for my club in Japan on the Friday. And then we're on the bus on the way back. We finally get back to our apartment location. It would have been like 11:30, 12 o'clock at night. And I'm fast asleep. And then I get a phone call from Stephen Larkin at about 2 a.m. Go, mate, I need you on a flight tomorrow morning to come out here. And I was like, what are you talking about? Come to France, play some midweek games against French barbars and things like that, and potentially play more games and sit in the bench. I remember just lying in bed, eyes closed, pitch black. I'm still in agony and pain, just previously played the game a couple of hours earlier. And I was like, right, what time's the flight? Thinking maybe the following week or something like that. And he goes, no, 10 a.m. It's already booked. So then he's like, oh, how are you going to get you over there? I said, mate, the only way that you will get me over there is you've got to buy my wife and my son a ticket because they were there for my first and they'll be there for my last. So and that was a one rugby memory that I'll never forget is had my oldest son there. Played my last representative game in the gold colours against the French barbars and took him in the change rooms after and met a few of the French legends and meeting some of our young superstars. Like that was Marika Korobetti's first game in rugby, and things like that, like they're memories that, I know I'll cherish and my kids will cherish. And the last one, so they were there for my first and last. That was the best thing about that. And my last one was, mate, we're pretty lucky. We've got a pretty special family, my family, and my cousin being big Wycliffe Palu, our mums and sisters, is the year later in 2006, he made his Wallaby debut and I was starting. I think we played England in Melbourne, same day, 1 year later. And then he came off the bench and played. And for our family, that was a pretty significant moment because my uncle played for Tonga way back in the day. My sister played for Australia with netball, and just having us at that moment represent our country was pretty unique, but also pretty special for us. And that was a really cool family memory and family moment.
That's awesome. That was really cool. So, who have been some of your favourite teammates to play with and why?
I've enjoyed them all. They've all been very, very different. Obviously, like when you talk about playing in that time, and again, very different to what it is now. Like I loved playing, and again, it might be biased because they're all, most of my Brumbies boys, but Matty Giddo, we grew up together playing with and against, and I used to always enjoy, used to always be quite competitive, see who would score first and things like that. Clyde Rathbone, we became quite close, still are, and Joe Roth. They're like, as a young kid coming through and get these older players that mentor you through and just encourage you to, chance your arm and have a go and, hey, it's just footy, let's just do it. Yeah, mate, it was incredible. Obviously, Griggs, huge part of it, me and still a really good mate, Stephen Larkin. Like we every now and then have a chat about certain things. And I remember when he was over in Munster, I was having a chat when they were losing all the time because I was just picking on him, taking the piss really. But it's good to see him back on Aussie soil. I think that's somebody that we definitely need. Is very switched on and clued up in how the game is played and how he wants to be played. And mate, Griggs and those boys revolutionised the game of rugby for us in Australia and the game itself. Like, late 90s, early 2000s, and that's what every country around the world mould themselves on, was us. Now we've got to not revamp it, but we've just got to get out in front of it now and be better. So, yeah, mate, all those Brumbies boys, all the Wallabies, Chris Latham, good mate of mine, Radicki Summer, like I could name a whole stack of guys. I thoroughly enjoyed playing with those guys because I knew it's the same mentality now, but I just knew that they had my back and I had their back. And, we enjoyed ourselves off field too. Like, mate, we went out and had beers and stuff like that on the weekend and enjoyed each other's company because it was just that environment. You had to enjoy doing what you're doing. Otherwise, it's mundane. You're in there every day doing the same thing. Let's enjoy being here then. How do we do that? Bit of everything. And that's, we trained hard, probably play a little bit too hard at times, but that's life.
No, that's awesome. How does Mark Chisholm go as a teammate? Because he has been a previous guest on this podcast with the biggest biceps, apparently, some people have ever seen.
Yep. Chizzy's one of those ones. As soon as he takes his shirt off, you put yours on. And you get off as quick as you can. No, it's fun. I should have said she's a really good mate of mine. Our wives are really good friends. So we're actually up there not too long ago, pre-Christmas, and catching up. Unreal. It's funny, like, we all played with and against each other within that age group, about a year or two apart. And, like we all became really close and we've stayed close ever since. So you're looking at, you're talking about 1 or 2 years age gap here with your Mark Chisholms, your George Smiths, myself, your Matt Giddos, all those boys in there, Nick Henderson within that Brumbies group. But even with that Wallabies group was the same. Like those guys were originally from Queensland, Chizzy was. And so Tamati Harua, he was one of my good teammates and good favourite, is that we always stuck together, and that was just one of those things that I think is really important. And there was no hierarchy. There was no I play for the Brumbies, you play for New South Wales, you play. It was none of that. It was just which I know they don't have. There was very much a pride fact that you play for a state, doesn't matter who. But once you sort of dawn and you jump into that squad, mate, we're all in it for the same reasons. We all bleed the same, so we've got to make sure we're on the same page together. And that part was fun. But Chizzy, he's got the world's biggest arms when he was on. Like, man. Still, I teased him about his calves, though.
They're small, are they?
Yeah, I don't know. I was telling him he had no calves.
That's awesome. Hi, everyone. We just want to take a quick break from this episode. We hope you're enjoying this episode so far and all the content we have produced. We appreciate all the support from our listeners and followers so far. If you haven't already, sign up to Elite Rugby S&C blog today. We provide free exclusive content every single week to our subscribers. You'll find our website link in our bio below. Remember to like, subscribe, and share Elite Rugby S&C on all social media platforms to all your family and friends. Thanks again for all your support, and now back to the episode. So that 2004 Super Rugby Competition, that was an incredible year, and I would have been like, I don't know, 6 or 7, so I can't really remember, but I do remember being at the grand final. The Brumbies were crowned champions, if you didn't know. Can you explain that season? Like, what went right that season to win, and what does it take to be a champion?
What it takes to be a champion, everything to go right. Injuries, performance, coaching, individual selection, how you live off the field, everything. Like, it's just everything came together that year for us at the Brums. It just, we're in a stage there where New Zealand super teams are just starting to take over and be really dominant with a lot of things. You're talking about the Blues undefeated the year prior in 2003, you're talking about, and then you got the Crusaders the year before that, and then us, the Brums, winning it against the Sharks in 2001. So, it was quite a when I say heavy competition, it was quite a tough competition because every team was bloody good. And for us in that moment, obviously we had a bit of trouble earlier on in pre-season with departing of our head coach and things like that. And if you probably don't know the full story, is just that before the season even started, he was told that he was no longer he was no longer going to be our head coach going forward after this season, and a few other bits and pieces which I won't say, but it was kind of left out. And we as a group, we lost to the Chiefs in, where were we? Palmerston, or I can't remember, or maybe Wellington, I wasn't too sure. We lost to the Chiefs like 50-something to 3. And on the 70, it was like, we're in 70-odd minutes, 75th minute, mate, we were 0. And Bernie kicked a field goal like 10 metres out, kicked a field goal, it was like 50-something to 3. And I was like, what did you fucking do that for? Like, he was just like, and then I just remember having a brief chat with him after. He goes, mate, we're the Brumbies. We don't ever fucking get 0. I was like, oh, yeah, okay. As a kid, it's constantly been in my head. Not because of that. It's just a moment that I was like, oh, and again, appreciate to that from Bernie then. I didn't appreciate it then, but I do appreciate it now, just the understanding of it. We're the Brumbies, we fucking never get 0. So I was like, oh, damn it. But we got thumped, mate. We were awful that day. After the game, David Nussafur brought us in and read us the riot act. It just ripped into us, every single one of us. Not always, not individually per se, but just everybody in the room, the whole squad, and just fired off and just went off. I've never heard that before. After that, he goes, righto, no one's allowed to go out. No one's on the piss. That's it. You're all on a drinking ban. And then I can't remember who initiated we just want to have a players meeting if that's all right. I can't remember if it was Owen or Griggs or someone like that. Called us in. So we had a players meeting. So all the staff went out. And yeah, the senior players got up, and we're all the young bucks here, mind you. We're 19, 20 years old, just sort of just starting out, and how good's this? And we got ripped in and we got smashed against the Chiefs, considering we belted the Chiefs early last. And then the senior players got up and just said, I can't remember who said it, don't hold me to this, but something along these lines like, fuck that. No, you don't tell us. We're all grown men here. You know what? We're all out tonight on the piss. That's all. We're all going out. Like, we got thumped and we were like, head down. That was pretty embarrassing. That was more than pretty embarrassing. And the senior boys got up and said, nah. In the players meeting, he said, no, fuck that. You can't. No, we're out. Every one of us literally looked at all of us, just sort of went, every one of us are out tonight. So you guys have 30 minutes to get ready, and we're all at the front and we're gone. So we're like, oh, shit, okay. So literally half an hour later, we're all changed, and there's nothing to do in this town. I think there's like one pub or something like that. I can't remember. And we were all there. And it would have been come 10:30 at night or whatever. I don't know whether this is a good thing to say, but we were standing in this pub. We've all had way too much. And the coaching staff walked past the windows. Yeah, and a few boys jumped up and told them where to go and everything else. And you don't do that. We got to work together. And yeah, it was at the time, it was exterior. It was very funny. And then we kind of woke up the next morning. I thought we were going to be gone, but it was complete silence. We got back to Canberra, had that day off on the Sunday, got back together Monday. Obviously, coach was not happy with decisions we all made. But I remember that Griggs and a few of the boys got up and said, hey, we made this decision together as a team. We are a team, and this is what's going to happen. Mate, and literally from that Monday, I'll never forget it, from that Monday, it's like everybody just sort of just turned a corner. Just, when I say turn a corner, just flicked a switch. And, mate, every day was competitive. Every day was challenging, but we enjoyed it. But when I say enjoyed it, it was, even though I think it was the day after, the Tuesday, it was like, right, we'll meet this little pub called Filthies. It was called Filthies in Canberra. And this is where we all stayed in around this area in Kingston. So the pub was called Filthies. So we're like, right, we're going to Filthies. Mate, it's an Irish pub that's just open out into a courtyard into this grassy area, and Joe Public walked past and get in there. So we're like, righto. So Tuesday afternoon, we finished training. We had a pretty tough session. we went there and had a couple of beers. Like, it wasn't crazy. We purposely went there. I think we all had maybe 3 or 4 beers each, and all the senior players like, we're good, we're done, sweet, we're out, and that's it. We left. Mate, I don't think we had another beer for a good few weeks after that, even longer, probably the month, because it was just, mate, we're on, and we trained. And I'll never forget the first beer we had was after we beat the Blues at home, considering they were undefeated the year prior. And we beat them in Canberra Stadium. And then from that, when we did beat them, and it was just after that game, we all knew. Everybody knew, like, we're on here, like, let's go. And we just jumped on, ran with it all year.
It's very, very interesting story, because you got to find that balance between playing, training, and then living a life as well. You can't just be always a professional athlete. You got to have some things that you can enjoy yourself, relax, not worry about, critics or the game itself. And it was just cool to see how, you came together as a team. And that's what that needs to happen, is coming together as a team, because if you don't come together as a team, you're not going to be playing well out there for each other. And it was really cool to see the senior players stand up to the coach, but it wasn't in a way like, screw you and all that. It was just like, no, this is what we think is best. We're going to do it, and this is what's going to happen. If we get in some trouble or anything like that, we'll face it together. But yeah, I wouldn't be too mad as a head coach if that happened, if my team, got together. That could have been my plan the entire time. Who knows?
Yeah, that's right. And it was, and again, I look at the time back then with playing and everything else, like, to be honest, mate, we probably got in the piss way too much. But we knew that when we got on the piss, so if we were out on the Saturday, some boys that would have to come in on the Sunday for rehab, those guys were never allowed. So we had one blanket rule: if you were injured or you're in any doubt, you are not allowed. If you touch one and you have a beer or whatever, any form of alcohol, and you're under a cloud, the players stood you down. Said, mate, you're out. You're not playing this week. See you later. So it was just, and that was all driven by everyone. The senior players started it, and we jumped on it and was like, yeah, that's a great idea. And then we just, as a playing group, just sort of try to make the best decisions for everyone. And yeah, as I said, we're probably on the piss too much. Times have changed. You can't do that anymore. But we knew that we had to work just as hard or even harder when we got back onto the paddock. And we were pretty diligent too. That was probably one of my first times I've actually experienced going to the nth degree to overanalyze teams. And so they end up breaking our whole squad down into smaller groups. And so, outside backs, that was led by Joe Roth. I think there were 6 or 7 of us. And you had inside backs that was led by, I think it was Sterlo. And then back row, I think led by Owen. So you had senior players. Tight 5, I think, was led by Dave Giffen and and Bill Young. So, and Jeremy Paul. So we had like a huge amount of senior player experience in those groups. But what was really cool, when we did those sort of analytical sessions and reviewing and watching games, it was like, okay, let's look at our performance first, but I don't want us to dive too heavy on our performance, just stuff that we need to be better at or we can improve. Let's jump onto that. And then Roffy would step back, and us young boys would get in there and let's accumulate an idea and a pattern or whatever that may look like, and sweet, that was it. 2 or 3 points, perfect, no worries. And then we'd do the same when we'd review and preview the opposition and what their back three looked like. And we would, every week, one of us, whoever was in that group, one would get picked out and would have to actually present that to the team. And that was different because the players drove that. Coaches never drove that. And so every week, a player, there was 4 or 5 groups, would come up and present. We've recognised this pattern as an outside back three. We want to look at some kicking opportunities. But before we'd present, we'd always come together. The senior players would come together, and the leadership group, attack group and tactics group would come together and formulate an idea and agree and disagree and put some stuff together. And then that group would present it, and it looks like this. So that was pretty unique, and that's my first experience of that. Mate, loved it. I was like, shit, I could do this all the time. Like, look at teams breaking down and go, yep, and just go from there. That was pretty cool.
That's awesome. It's an incredible season, and yeah, it just worked out. Something bad happened, and then you got together as a team, and then figured it out, and then had one of the best Super Rugby seasons ever.
Yeah, and we did do an individual learning course that they brought in, an external company that came in and did. I can't remember the wording now. Can't remember the words and what it's called, but they broke each individual down in the way they learn. So it was pretty much your learning skills, mate, whether you're theory, you're practical, whether you're visual, all that type of stuff. So, they knew, and everybody knew the way that people would learn, and you'd actually relay communication and conversation with them. I'd have a young outside back. I can't talk, but I'd have a young outside back would come in, and I know that he's a visual person. So I'd be sitting there and go, let's go through this and have a look at certain things on the computer, and we'd touch stuff up together and go, mate, what do you think? And then we'd write some ideas down and, visually put it down for him. He was like, yeah, sick, I love that. So it was cool for me because I learned, I could teach it, and he learned, and he would say stuff, and I'd be like, oh, great idea. So then I would learn from him. So that's where that was for us in '04. And yeah, it might have been pretty unique back then, but it was just normal for us.
Yeah, that's just like one of those, one percenters, figuring out how people can learn better is like, why wouldn't professional rugby athletes want to do that in professional sporting organizations? It makes everyone a lot easier to be able to learn, and you can just have all these different options available for people.
Yep. And the best part about that is when we're all out of Canberra, so we're all from somewhere else, Sydney, Brisbane, I don't know, everywhere. And so when we're all coming to Canberra, we knew that, mate, we're in it together as a group, and we're a pretty tight, unique group, all young families, So my wife was pregnant in '04 during that grand final, and we had our son later on that year. But that was kind of, we're all there together as a young family. Like a lot of guys, like I know that some of the older boys had some young kids, and the following year we had ours, and a lot of the groups did that. It was just one of those things. Like I remember there was a photo my wife only showed, it wasn't too long ago, actually pre-Christmas. She showed me a photo, and there was something like 6 of us Brumbies boys, all with newborns in a space of 3 weeks. So we're like, holy shit. Obviously, we got back from tour all at the same time, and that was it. But it was kind of like within that thing, and that's just kind of how our family kind of grew as the Brumbies. So that was pretty unique. Running around, mate. By 2008 or 9 or whatever it was, holy shit, man! I don't know. It was 20 odd kids fighting about 25 kids every training session, but that's what it was, and we loved it.
Yeah, and I think that's what the Brumbies do really well is bringing the families there together and having the culture as well, because we've got a lot of people from different cultures and embracing that, especially the Polynesian community. I think the Brumbies, in my perspective, do really, really well because they're just down the road from where I live, and I get to see and hear things from their Instagram and all that. And yeah, if you can do that as a rugby organization, bring the family, get them involved, and also bring the community and culture, like you're just going to build a better organization and a better team as well.
Yeah, environment. Just all we're doing, whether you're a player or a coach, is just you just want to create an environment that you want to be a part of. Culture is a byproduct of all that. You create an environment that everybody wants to be there. That's what you'll get.
100%. So speaking of pitches, something I did leave out of your questions was, do you remember you taught me how to kick back in 2008, 2009? I was 13, and we took this picture.
Grammar?
No, Darren. This was me at Darren. If you can sort of see, it's blurry.
Yeah, right.
Mum organised this for my birthday present, and it was at Old Brumbies HQ, and yeah, we did a one-on-one kicking session. We did place kicking, goal kicking, drop kicking, and just got a nice photo at the end as well.
Yeah, how good! Yes, at Griffith Oval. Yeah, perfect. Awesome. I didn't remember. Thanks for bringing it up, though.
Yeah, it's just that full circle things, you just don't know who you're going to meet, and then later on in life, you just don't know what those interactions are going to be, really.
No, mate, you're right there. It's funny with that kicking. I get hit up all the time now. I'm teaching a stack of kids. I'm actually teaching our local Colts team this afternoon. We've got pre-Christmas thing again. We've gone from, I think, having 6 or 7. I think we got 20 odd kickers. So
that's awesome.
It's enjoyable. It's fun.
And I to this day, I still tell people, some rugby athletes when I do show them my kicking skills, because they look at me, I'm a prop hooker. They're like, there's no way you'll be able to kick. I can kick quite well, to be honest. Yeah. And I say, Mark Gerrard taught me how to kick. And unfortunately, some of them don't know who you are because they're a lot younger, the younger generation. But I say, go look him up. He played for the Brumbies, Wallabies. He was one hell of a player.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. But to to accommodate that comment is I remember that it was only a couple of, and again, pre-Christmas when I was doing some kicking with some of the boys. I had my boots on, I didn't kick a ball, and they're like, can you kick? I'm like, yeah, come on, we'll have a muck around and see how we go. Now, these kids are 18, 19, just down here at our local club and have a bit of a punt off and a kick off and, put a bit of money on it. I said, here, $20, winner can take it. Like, no problem. So I get to keep my money still.
That's good. So I just got a couple more questions before we wrap this up because it's definitely going over time. But what did you learn through strength and conditioning training over your time as a professional rugby athlete, and how important is it for rugby athletes?
Yes, definitely strength and conditioning is very important. I think getting that balance, and again, revert to balance with that strength part to the conditioning component, I think is very important. But at the same time, it's not so much about you being stronger and everything else. You've actually got to know your own body, so your body mechanics and how you will work, because not everybody can snatch, not everybody can power clean, not everybody can deadlift and squat, bum to the floor type thing. So yeah, all individually has to be catered for, but you have to understand what your body is capable of, with your depth in the squat, with your bench press, everything. Everything's very, very different. So for me, how important it was pretty important because I was only allowed to do what they call core lifts because I had a tendency to get heavy and big real quick. And so the joys of being a Polynesian, mate, it was just genetic. So
John Tawaki said that as well. He was only allowed in the gym for a couple of weeks because he would just blow up, and then the rest of it he was just hopping on a bike riding around Lake Burley Griffin.
Yeah, mate, that was predominantly very similar. So it was. I was definitely in there 3 days a week, but the 3 days a week were more speed strength rather than power, just because the power would have just got real chunky and big. But I kind of did anyway, so I kind of played in and around that 110 kilos. I think it is very important, but I think having the understanding of, as I said, like your body mechanics and how you work, you can really get that down, and you can make some big mistakes as well if you don't get that right. I think as a young kid coming through, I think it's more important to actually understand your body a bit more. So work on more, so your body weight strength, and then slowly, gradually build up when you're, 18, 19, and maybe a bit earlier if you're capable of throwing a little bit of weight in there, but not too heavy. I wouldn't recommend do too heavy, because if you can get that part of your body sort of in tuned, sort of mentally to physically and everything else, you'll find that you'll actually get stronger and faster, bigger and everything else quicker, because you have that complete body mechanic movement and understanding. On top of that, I think instead of just the strength a la weight, gym and everything, you need to do, I personally think, Pilates. I'm not a huge fan of yoga. It's just glorified stretching for me. I personally think that Pilates, yes, I'm a little bit biased because my wife's a Pilates teacher, but I did Pilates for 20 odd years, which kept me together, so to speak. And it just gave me more of my inner core strength, more of my stability, and just in and around my joint strength as well. I just find that because that gives you your whole body tune up as well. I found a lot more in that and a lot more benefit. I've done yoga a couple of times. Wasn't a huge fan. I just didn't want to twist and turn my body because I'll never twist and turn my body like that. But with Pilates, it was all based around your core, and that's kind of what I needed, back strength, which reverted into my hamstrings and calves and everything else. So,
no, it's awesome. It's a great insight, and couldn't agree more. You definitely got to understand your body and what type of training works for you, and then progressing that in a controlled manner. And if you're seeking out some other stuff to benefit your rugby, Pilates is definitely an option. Why not explore something that could potentially, unlock something and help take your game to the next level? What is the main advice you tell young rugby athletes today wanting to play professional rugby?
Young rugby athletes, I think the difference in, I don't know, I look at it this way. There's a lot of young kids coming through, and expectation to reality, two very different things. A lot of these kids come in thinking they're better than what they are. Shane happened. You've got to be a bit realistic within yourself as well. Times have changed. People are different. Kids are different these days. If they want to be the best, you got to be able to sacrifice. You got to be able to challenge yourself. At the same time, like, don't expect everything. My biggest gripe with a lot of these kids, and they come out with comments, and I coach some of them, and they all of a sudden come up and go, "Oh, my stats are better than so and so." I'm like, "Yeah, mate, you only play 10 minutes a game, and he's playing 70 minutes, and you're comparing your stats for a 10-minute block. I'll compare them both and go, oh, actually, they're very similar, or he's actually sits above yours, or whatever it may be." It's just, you got to stop competing against everybody else individually and make sure you actually get the best out of you. That'll naturally be better than, oh, mate, or be competitive to the next person, whoever that may be, boy or girl, doesn't matter. If you get your basics right, you'll be sweet. If you cannot catch and pass, playing the wrong game. If you cannot communicate, you're playing the wrong game. So just basic skills, and don't rely on your basic skills either. You got to think outside the box and try things as well. But just don't expect everything, because it ain't happen. Coaches aren't going to come to you and go, this needs to happen, that needs to happen, that needs to happen for you. You know, go source that information. Go seek it.
No, that's great advice. You got to work hard for it. You got to sacrifice, and if you're not honing in on those basic skills, then you're probably not going to go far. Unfortunately, like, you can't just spend all this time in the gym and then not transfer, that force, power, strength, and core strength into rugby. You got to be able to continue to work together on your skills and gym and on all areas, and make that sort of intertwine with each other to be the best rugby athlete that you can be. But you got to be a good teammate as well. You can't just focus on you and focus on your stats, as you just said. You got to be able to push everyone in your team to be better, and then make yourself better as well.
Yep. One thing that we had at the Brums, we had a no dickhead policy.
It's a good policy.
You knew if you're a dickhead real quick.
That's awesome. So a segment that we have on the podcast is the Triple H. I think we already answered one of them with a highlight, but first one is hardship. Can you think of a hardship in your rugby career that sort of stands out, and how did you get through this hardship, and what are some lessons that you learned during it as well?
Yeah, the hardship for me was probably the transitioning from not being a part of the Wallabies and thinking like, hold on, I've been there for so long, and all of a sudden I'm just like, am I not good enough? All that type of stuff. That was more of a mental space for me. That's why I went to Japan. I just needed to revamp myself, and I had a young family at the time. So that was more of a mental block for me when it came to rugby, because I didn't appreciate the game and I didn't give it enough love. I went to Japan and actually took a step back and realized, like, hold on, I really, really, really enjoy this game. Why do I enjoy it? Because the people, like, I shouldn't be upset about, I shouldn't be down. There are times you're going to be down, but I should never have any ill thoughts or have that sort of mental blockage where I like, F this, F that. It just, I went through a stage where I was like that, and I was like, nah. When I moved to Japan, I was like, you never do that again, mate. So that was kind of where I was at. Probably one of the hardest things in my life was talk about sacrifice. I lived away from my family for 7 years in Japan. So they were based in Sydney, and I would only see them maybe every 12 weeks, sometimes longer. And it kind of worked out where I'd only see them 3.5 months a year while I was away. Actually, 3 months a year. Majority of the time I was away because I was coaching and playing. Selfish on my behalf, yeah. I look back on it now, and it's not a regret, but I do think that it was a selfish moment. And I constantly bring this up with my wife. She's like, no, we made this decision together for you to be over there to benefit our family while we're here. And we had young kids starting, high school and school and things like that. It was just, we're at a particular crossroads in our family. Like, what do we do? Do we move over? We stay? And that was that is probably the hardest thing, because I'd wake up every day by myself in this house thinking, what am I fucking doing here? My wife got my 4 kids at home and I'm here. Like, it doesn't make sense. That's not how you do it. So, when we had our 4th, made a decision. Can't do that anymore.
That's awesome. Like, it's probably something not spoken about, when you do move away to overseas, you're going to have to make that sacrifice with your family, and if you have a young family, it's something that you need to communicate and sort out. And, it sounds like you have a really good partner that allowed you to, achieve your dreams, but you're also doing it for the family as well. So Yeah, that's good. That's awesome. So the next one, hero. Who was your hero, and why is this person your hero?
I don't have, um, yeah, I don't have a hero. I don't have one. Yeah. I don't really have one hero. It's mainly just around my family. So, we grew up initially as a young kid, pretty humble with not much, but what mum and dad gave us was the best. And I was like, this is incredible. At the same time, when it comes to hero and looking at sport, it's actually just my family in general. So I don't have one hero. I've actually got my family. Now I'll just give a real quick brief on that. My auntie, which was Cliff's mum, she ran in the Commonwealth Games. She ran the Pacific Games. Quite a renowned athlete in the South Pacific. She won some gold and silvers there as well. My uncle played in 1973 for Tonga that beat Australia in Brisbane. And then obviously with my cousins, two of my cousins who are a few years older than me represented Tonga as well in rugby. And having my cousin Wycliffe and myself represent Australia, my sister represent Australia, I think, as I said, I don't have a hero, but I've got huge amount of respect and love for my Tongan heritage. And that's the Yongi side, the Iongi, Yongi family. And purely based, if you jump on there and have a look, there's a few successful people in there. And, I'm pretty proud of that. I'm pretty proud of that culture. And I'm pretty proud of that DNA that's in me. And I constantly bring that up with the kids and try to show them as much love as I can and give them the teachings. And, that's the way I got brought up. So did my wife. And, we're all about family. So, I'm pretty lucky that way. And I look at it this way as well. So there's myself, played for our country. My sister, she played for our country. Okay, we both have 4 kids. Her husband's Dave Dennis. You know who that is? And then my cousin's Wycliffe with 5. So we've got a pretty cool little mix that we got a few boys in there, mate. There's 9 boys out of us 3. So we're almost there at a full team.
Oh. No, it definitely. It sounds like when all you guys get together, Christmas time or just a family sort of vacation, it would sound like it could get a bit competitive as well if the sports come out.
It's funny, mate. It's the complete opposite. No, it's not at all. Like it's funny we all got young kids now, and some a little older than others. But when we do get together, because it's so few and far between times that we do get together. When we do get together, like we kind of just sit back, relax, and have a couple of beers and just laugh, just talk shit, and just reminisce about life. Like we try to avoid your main topics in the world because, mate, we're not going to solve them. We're not going to get through to anyone. But it's just mainly just about our families and what we could do for our kids in the future, that type of thing. We're actually talking about booking a house now for Christmas time and actually getting all of us up there. And there's something like 47 of us. Correct. Yeah. So we're trying to find a farm. We might just have to camp and sleep in the bush. So we'll work that out. But mate, every time we get together, mate, my family's my hero. So all of them, including my wife. So she'd probably be my biggest hero, I reckon.
No, that's awesome. Family is everything, and it's great to see that you're so connected with your family and also your extended family as well. And who knows, there's some future superstars coming through that family as well.
Yeah, I don't know. It's funny, mate. I look at my mix. My wife's blonde hair, blue eyes, and you look at my side of the family. They all look. I thank God. So.
That's all good. And then the last one, I think we might have already touched about it, but what is the highlight that sort of stands out the most in your rugby career?
The highlight, two obviously major highlights for me was winning the Super Rugby in 2004, also representing our country. But another huge highlight for me was I got to I got to start for the Wallabies against England in Twickenham. And the reason being my grandfather's English-French, and a huge part of my old man, obviously, he never got to know his father because he passed away when he was young, but that was him. And he tried to surprise me saying that he wasn't in England to come watch me play against England at Twickenham because that's what he was extremely proud of, and a little bit emotional when I did see him. I did catch him at the pub because he tried to hide from me, but that was pretty cool. I think that part was a huge part for him, and that's something that I know that I'll cherish. That moment for him and my grandfather, which is pretty cool. The last one, sorry, mate, I got a heap of them, but the last one again, revert back to families. I got to represent Tonga, which is pretty rare. The non-test fixture, but I got to represent Tonga in the King's coronation game. So it was the Tongan Invitational 15 versus the World 15 for the coronation of our king, the Tongan king, back in 2008. And again, cultural wise, to wear that jersey and to represent our country, pretty proud.
That's awesome. I did read that on Wikipedia, and I just wasn't sure how correct it was, but here we go. The source is correct. That's awesome. So, who should be my next guest on the podcast? Is there any sort of old teammates that you can think of that you're gonna call out that should jump on for a chat?
Oh, mate, there's a whole stack of them if you can reach out to them, like your Georgie Smiths, all those boys. If he doesn't have social, mate, so good luck getting hold of him. Mate, Radiki Samo is always a good one for a bit of a laugh. You had Chizzy on already. Mate, like trying to get your Gits or your Yadamashi Coopers, mate, like my brother-in-law, Davey Dennis, like any of those boys, mate, they're all on social, so you can them and find them. I'm sure. It may probably a good one would be Stephen Hoyles, That could be a good one. He returns back from today from the States, from the head coach of Los Angeles, and he's taking up the role of head coach at the Wicks. So that could be a good little one.
Okay, yeah, for sure. I'll definitely reach out to them. I have already tried to reach out to Gits. He does have quite a bit of a following, and I don't think he's read the message just yet. So maybe one day.
That's good.
Mm. So where can listeners find you on social media if they do want to reach out and connect with you?
Mate, I'm on Instagram. I don't know the name because my wife. Oh, I think it's just my name. So you'll see me with my wife and the 4 little ones. They're a lot bigger now. That's us on social. Mate, you reach out to my company name on there too. It's Gerrard & Co Projects. That's on social as well. There's a web page as well. So yeah, mate, reach out, send messages. More than happy to connect and have a chat.
Easy done. I'll put that in the show notes as well, so it makes it a lot easier for people to find you. So thanks for joining me today. This has been an awesome chat, and it's just been good to get to know your story a lot more and your opinion on the Wallabies and all that, and just understand your rugby career a lot more. And it was really cool to meet you back, when you gave me that kicking lesson, and then to, meet you again today and have a better chat. So thank you so much. I know people are going to get a lot out of this episode, and all the best for 2023.
I appreciate that, mate. Happy New Year, mate. Hope it's a good one. Keep in touch.
Thanks for tuning into another episode of Elite Rugby S&C podcast. Remember to like, subscribe, and rate Elite Rugby S&C on Spotify and YouTube, and make sure you follow us on Instagram. Sign up to become a beast via the link in the description or via Instagram page. So don't wait, make that good decision, and join Elite Rugby S&C today and take your game to the next level. Thanks for listening.